I left Ethiopia because of a conflict of conscience. I had a problem. I was loyal to the Ethiopian people. I served the Ethiopian people. I wanted to serve our people. But for me, it was difficult to make this balance between the human problems and the political priorities of my government.
This is the port of Baltimore. Back in 1984, huge freighters loaded their holds with emergency relief aid, food, medicines, blankets, and the like, and they sailed for Ethiopia. The response came as a result of BBC images of massive starvation. The international community, including millions of Americans, gave from the heart. Millions of lives were saved, but the optimism did not last, and neither did the giving. Today, 7 million Ethiopians face still another famine, potentially more devastating than the last one. The big question is why more and more people waver between compassion and skepticism as ongoing reports of political conflict and escalating war in Ethiopia replace images of starving children. In a conflict of conscience, Americans are asking the tough questions first. In the next half hour, we will answer questions about food, money, politics, and a continuing devastating war that has aggravated the famine in Ethiopia. We will see firsthand the enormous conflict of conscience surrounding Ethiopia today. Within its northern provinces, Ethiopia has battled rebel factions for 27 years in the longest war in Africa's history. In the spring of 1988, that war escalated when greatly outnumbered Eritrean and Tigrayan rebel forces successfully launched a surprise offensive against Ethiopian troops. Thousands of Ethiopian soldiers were killed or captured. In retaliation, the government launched massive air attacks, cut back food distribution, and expelled foreign relief workers in the north. The result, the return of hunger. The new government motto is everything to the war front, as more than 160,000 Ethiopian soldiers move into combat. Understandably, there is a growing fear that the worst is yet to come. What keeps this bitter war going in the face of another killer famine? The answers are long and complex, but we begin to understand the issues by looking at some of Ethiopia's history of culture, politics, and famine. Ethiopia represents a diverse blend of nationalities, rich in culture and history. These proud and ancient people trace their roots back more than 2,000 years to biblical times, to the kingdom of Aksum, the reported birthplace of Ethiopian civilization. The Ethiopian Coptic Christian Church, still a strong cultural and religious force, dates back to the 4th century. A long succession of emperors mark Ethiopia's political history, among them Haile Selassie, the 225th ruler who assumed power in 1929. He reigned 45 years until drought and political turmoil fueled a Marxist-led revolution in 1974. The new government, led by Lieutenant Colonel Mengistu Haile Mariam, confronted the same situation in 1984 and 85 when another killer famine threatened millions of people. That famine gave rise to an unprecedented worldwide outpouring of compassion with efforts such as Band-Aid, Live Aid, and USA for Africa.
But if you just believe, there's nowhere we can fall.
Private relief agencies immediately reacted to the impending disaster, and urgently needed food began to arrive. Organizing this massive relief effort was difficult, and there was concern that supplies were not actually reaching the hungry. Although reports of starvation come from throughout Ethiopia, the worst affected areas continue to be in the northern provinces of Eritrea and Tigray. Here, the escalation of war cuts off desperately needed aid and threatens the lives of relief workers. 3 million people at risk fight more than drought.
In the last 2 days, the Ethiopian MiGs have come here and they have dropped the bombs. And you could see they have devastated the area. You could see the difference over here. It has been as green and better green than this one. But now you could see it. It looks as if it's dust. This is not the only place. With just few hundred meters, you'll see another bomb. And you could see the frequency and number of bombs being dropped here in this area. But by destroying all this, people would be go hungry and, of course, kneel down under their regime.
It's possible to carry out development programs while the war is continuing, because we cannot wait until everything is destroyed, and therefore we have started development programs.
Ethiopia's strength lies in its military power. Heavily backed by Russian aircraft and artillery, Ethiopia's 350,000-man army is the largest military force in Africa. The major governing force in Eritrea is the Eritrean People's Liberation Front, otherwise known as the EPLF.
We prefer to bring a negotiated settlement to the conflict, but that is nearly impossible. As you might have heard it recently, Mengistu Haile Mariam himself, he said, either us or them have to vanish.
In Tigray, the governing force is the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, the TPLF.
I don't see it getting better. I see it getting worse. Recently, because of the military situation in Tigray, the government is bombing towns.
The EPLF and the TPLF now control 80 to 90% of the territory, with the Eritreans functioning as a fully armed military force.
We have preferred to solve the conflict peacefully, but if the Ethiopian regime doesn't want it to be solved peacefully, we're going to show them how we're going to win, and we are going to win in the very recent future.
Although the two movements are often lumped together, the stated goals of each are radically different. In 1952, the United Nations joined Eritrea, a former Italian colony, with Ethiopia. 10 years later, in violation of international law, Emperor Selassie forcibly annexed Eritrea. Made up of 9 different ethnic groups, Eritrea struggles for total independence from Ethiopia.
We always say that we are not Ethiopians, we are not Ethiopians, we are not Ethiopians, we are Eritreans, we have got our own identity. Without Eritrea, I can't see where I can stand.
I am forced to say that I am an Ethiopian. But feeling-wise, sentiment-wise, the way I was raised, I wasn't raised as an Ethiopian. I wasn't raised as any other nationality, but as an Eritrean.
The Tigrayan conflict stems from a desire for equality within a multinational state.
And we are fighting for national equality and democratic rights. That our first alternative is to have a united democratic Ethiopia where people can have equal rights and participation.
The TPLF does not want an independent Tigrayan nation, however, recognizing that the Tigrayans are Ethiopians. The TPLF wants to promote unity within equality for all of Ethiopia's people. As the director of the Relief and Rehabilitation Commission in 1984 and 85, Dawit Giorgis was Ethiopia's central figure in aid distribution during the last famine. Since then, he has defected to the United States.
All are going to be losers. The Ethiopian government is going to lose. The rebel movements are going to lose. And by far, many more Ethiopians are going to die.
The Ethiopian government's answer to peace lies in its new constitution, passed in late 1987.
It tries to solve the problem that we have in the north in a peaceful way. It's the constitution guarantees, autonomy, administrative, self-determination for the different nationalities within the country.
While supporters of the Constitution see it as a generous move, Eritreans condemn it as an attempt to divide and conquer. The Eritrean People's Liberation Front says it is not seeking a military solution to the conflict. The front proposes peace in the form of a referendum, leaving it up to voters to decide whether they want full independence, federal association with Ethiopia, or regional autonomy. Under the plan, however, the Ethiopian government would lose its only seaports. The plan could also set the stage for trouble from Ethiopia's Arab enemies.
I think it's important that we recognize that not only do 3 million Eritreans face the prospect of their land being turned into a free fire zone, but also that Ethiopia is a military government. If the military suffers a major defeat in Eritrea, the government itself is in jeopardy and the entire country could fall into anarchy.
Although the EPLF and the Ethiopian officials accuse each other of atrocities, both sides continue to put war before famine. Both sides say they have made attempts at peace, yet seem unwilling to compromise.
When the Eritrean people were trying to do something peacefully, the response they get from the other side was force. And they found out, we cannot fight fire without fire.
The secessionist elements have rejected any kind of peaceful gesture that has been given by the Ethiopian people and the government, and they are bent on their destructive activities.
Overall, Lieutenant Colonel Mengistu has drawn international criticism for his heavy-handed policies and violations of human rights. In retaliation against Ethiopia's human rights violations, U.S. Congressman Toby Roth and William Gray have proposed a bill stopping imports of Ethiopian coffee and other products.
What we're saying is that we want some leverage over the Mengistu regime because we have had a huge Holocaust in 84, 85, when thousands upon thousands starved, and now it's a reoccurring problem. The famine is coming back, and it's going to be worse than it was before.
There are some of us who would advise that that is not the proper thing to do, particularly at this time when things are so critical.
Mengistu has urged the Congress not to act on the bill, stressing the need for improved relations between America and Ethiopia.
The child who's dying of infection, who doesn't know a Marxist from a capitalist, and all he wants to do is to live.
As factions continue fighting, thousands suffer. Relief agencies find themselves prime targets as they move across borders with food supplies. Since 1987, 90 trucks have been destroyed. The result? Loss of life, loss of food, loss of valuable transportation. As the war escalates in Ethiopia, relief and development agencies have become frequent targets of attack. Lives have been lost, yet the subject of peace is often disagreed upon. For relief agencies, the natural question then becomes, how do we bring about peace? Should relief agencies take an active voice in pressuring for peace or leave it to the diplomats?
I think that that the notion that private voluntary organizations can act outside of politics in an essentially political crisis is a myth. It's not possible.
Two things could happen if we took an anti-governmental stand. One, our entire operation in Ethiopia could be shut down. And secondly, we would put 110 Ethiopian employees, World Vision Ethiopia, in instant jeopardy. And obviously we don't want to do that.
But I cannot understand why independent international agencies are not criticizing the government. They must criticize the government. Otherwise, this government conducts its routine with impunity.